long time. I know that we haven't seen each other since last year. Well, let me make sure I'm flipping through this right thing here. We have a consent agenda. I'm making sure I'm opening
You
mine.
need to go into closed session first.
Yeah, I see it, I have my other agenda, Terry, thank you. The first item is for us to consider going into closed session to discuss, an issue. So I'd like to have a motion to go into closed session pursuant to the open meetings law. Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, and we'll meet in the back, okay? We have a motion to return to general session.
So moved. Second.
We have a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we're back into regular session. On the next item is the consent agenda. We have a motion to approve that.
Motion. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. We have, on our general business, you see the items there. For the people who are here with the Regional Skill Center bids and update, just to, do you mind if we move to that item first so that those people may respond or with whatever questions we may have, and then they'd be able to leave. So we will begin with the Regional Skill Center bids first.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board. The second phase of the new Regional Skill Center project, which includes the upfit work inside the shell building, was bid on November 22nd, 2017. There were 3 qualified bidders that sent in a bid proposal. Each of the general contractors in the bid have previous experience with Russell County schools. The lowest responsible bidder for the project, which includes the base bid and 2 alternates, is Pro Construction Company, headquartered in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Pro Construction Company's bid of $3,765,100 is inclusive of alternate 1, which is the construction of offices and cyber technology classrooms, and alternate 2, which is the construction of culinary classrooms, kitchen, and multipurpose room. Funding for the project has been provided by the state, Golden Leaf Foundation, and other funds available to Johnson County schools. Pinnacle Architecture has reviewed the qualifications of Pro Construction Company and has provided a letter of recommendation. After reviewing the responsible bidders, staff also recommends awarding the bid to Pro Construction Company. A couple quick notes I would also like to mention in this is the timelines that we're looking at is looking at commencing the project at the end of May, 1st of June timeframe, and then it'll be $120 days for the base bid, and 60 to 70 additional days for the alternates, which would bring the project to close right around the end of November. Because it's such a tight frame, we also include liquidated damages of $250 a day if they don't meet the budget. At this point in time, I'll ask if anybody has any questions.
You're saying repeat that about the November before we ask for the motion.
The timelines that we're looking at, they would be able, the building will be in place to the point where they can actually start work at the end of May, 1st of June. And it'll take 120 days for the base bid to be completed, and then another 60 to 70 days for alternate 1 and alternate 2 to be completed, which would take it out to the end of November.
It's for all phases.
For all phases of the project.
To have a complete building with every skill center.
That's right.
Completed by that.
So the motion first that I want,
For the bid.
we can worry about the timelines later. I think that we're
We're just asking for the approval of the bid.
we're asking for
Just
the
vote
approval of the
construction.
bids. Can I have a motion to put
Motion.
that on the table? Is there a second? Now, are there any questions? Comments?
And I'm gonna do an update following the bid proposal on where we're at and what we're doing.
You have a question, comment, Bob, on the bids?
With regards to the bids, no.
Okay.
I just have a monetary question, 3.7. Where does that put us with the first phase?
Puts us
What was the first phase amount compared to this, or what's the total going in?
Okay, the first phase, amount for the site improvements was $1,307,000. Then for the base bid for building construction was an additional $2.47 million. So you're running right about 3.7 million for that. And then the inclusion of this is another 3.765. Now, there's some additional costs associated with that.
Those figures aren't right.
So what you're asking for the money that we actually put out first was money, the $5 million that came from not Golden Leaf, but from Harry Brown, as well as the Golden Leaf completed phase one, because they gave us an additional amount that equaled the amount of money that is needed to complete that first phase that we approved on.
So what's the total? That's what,
That's-
when we're
And
done.
the total, so this, in addition to, Steve,
Okay, in addition to that, the total cost for phase one and phase two, not including the equipment that's coming in for the instructional programs, but just for the construction, is $9.1 million, $9,180,529.
Could you repeat that?
$9,180,529.
and that's a contingency built in there, as well as
Contingencies are
there'll be
built.
some deductions from that once the highway's complete and we get some rebates. So what we're doing is we're giving you a number that reaches out and touches all phases.
That's right.
Okay, I'm confused then, I guess, because the first part of the contract we approved back on July 25th of last year for the initial site work and the construction of the shell building was bid out to Quadrant at $3.777,400. So it's basically $3.8 million. The upfits that are in this current bid here come out to about 3.8. It's $3,765,000. If I add those together, I came up with $77,542,000. I
Yes,
don't
sir.
know where the rest of it's coming from, and I'm not sure
Okay.
what our funding source is for that. If we're approving these bids today, how are we paying for it?
Well, Mr. Williams, a couple things that we're looking at, the construction contracts, the bids that we received from Quadrant and Pro is, which you were mentioning, the numbers that you had mentioned, but we also had to factor in the contingencies, the design fees, special inspections, title fees, advertising, printing, all these other, and furniture and technology, all these other ancillary items that are important for the construction project have to be included in the total project, which brings it up to $9.18 million. That being said, of that $9.18 million, we do anticipate some rebates coming, some reimbursements coming back in. For example, the DOT is looking at providing us, reimbursing us for the road work that's being taken care of as well. So we've got, so 9.18 is the worst case scenario. Then when the rebates come in, we do anticipate having some funds coming back.
So what we're really approving, asking for your approval, I think that's where the confusion comes in, is the additional, not the additional amounts that we're talking about that we know we're gonna have to incur, but the what is the next, the phase of the bid that Pro?
Yeah, phase two is $3,765,000.
And that's what we're asking for approval.
I understand, but if you take the $5 million and the $575 from the two awards that we already have from the state and from Golden Leaf, that only comes to 5.575. We're still $1.9 million, almost $2 million.
So we do have, so I'll let Jeff answer that one, because he's,
Part of the budget amendments that you just approved was monies in other special revenue fund, and we have finally started to receive the Impact Aid 7002 payments. So they've done some makeup, catch-up payments on that, and those funds are in there and more than covers what is necessary.
I think that was $4 or $5 million.
About 4.2.
And we're going to transfer that to capital improvements and another meeting then?
It's actually, was just approved as capital projects. It's just
Right.
within a separate fund. It's within the other special revenue fund, because that's where those are accounted for. So it's already established now, set up, ready to go. Once y'all approve these bids, they can start utilizing that funding to draw down to pay that. So if you're concerned about there being enough funds available to do this, which I can appreciate that sentiment, it is there. You can rest assured that there's enough there to more than cover these amounts.
I just don't like writing blank checks.
I
Well-
am with you on that.
Well, and to be honest with you, as we're in discussion, we were very pleased, you know, there were some things we were hoping would come through, and obviously, you know, it took a while, and for full disclosure, when we work with the federal government, we are told one thing, and sometimes that winds up being 6 months later. So, it just absolutely came in a great time for us when we knew we can complete this phase and use this money appropriately for completing this project, so.
So the question then I still have is, are we going to then transfer another $4 or $5 million from the special revenue fund into capital improvements?
Well, there's not a need to transfer. It will actually be expensed out of the other special revenue fund, because that's the appropriate category for us to.
We can't intertransfer the two funding sources then.
Right, this is a special revenue, and that's the category where those are accounted for. So what you'll see is part of this is gonna be expense through capital outlay, part of it's expense through other special revenue.
Jonathan, did you get your question answered?
I did, I just have one more. We won't have to seek out any further funding. We're
Well,
fully-
our upfit costs us more money. I did talk to Senator Brown, he was going to try to help us with that. If not, we'll, you know, be able to cover those expenses, but, we're also and not to give you a short answer, we're still seeking donations from different, skill sets. And so the end dollar isn't known yet, we're still waiting on delivering. These are our needs, what are we getting from the donation side of it? And actually, we got some great partnering going on with all those skill set areas, with Rheem being HVAC and Stevenson and a number of agencies in town. So we're gonna keep you updated on that in terms of, what that upfit looks like, in terms of dollar amount, and hopefully by the end of the day, that'll be a small number, not a larger number.
And I believe that once we get the building up, we're gonna see people coming and stepping up to the plate for that. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed? Next on that same item is the update.
So, as you well know, last week I had to make a very difficult decision about the Career Center because of the timeline that we had. And I will say to everyone in this room, as we talked about moving this Career Center and having it opened up for phase one in August, was a very aggressive timeline in terms of trying to complete something within a 1-year time frame. And we felt very strongly when we looked at it from the very beginning that that was going to be a very real possibility from the start of it. As the process moved through, and I'll be honest with you, over the last 2 days, being not that I'm in charge of all auxiliary services or in my former capacity of looking at this as closely as I have over the last couple of days, looking through the process that we had to do in terms of clearing the sites and going through the inspections, and as that process goes, I realized after our meeting yesterday that when I met with the architect and I met with the contractor and also when we talked to the county, there was a number of things that transpired for no one's fault that the project actually got delayed along the way. The Department of Insurance, for one, realizing that we have to send a lot of our plans up to the Department of Insurance, took longer than expected. It took almost 2 months, I believe, to get back what we needed from the Department of Insurance. When that happens, it just kind of stymies our progress. Here's another thing that I'll say, that is, if the responsible party is anybody, it would be on us because, and on me as superintendent, because this was a design build. So what this meant is we started off with a portion of the money and not having all the money at hand. So when we first started looking at the budget process of opening phase one, the mezzanine that we wanted to have in the project, we first didn't put in there because we didn't know if we were going to be able to afford it. Well, along the line, we knew the federal money finally was coming through, so we decided that the mezzanine needed to go in. So you know what happens when you add a mezzanine that is heavy and all that. Next thing, the design build changes, which in perspective goes back to the drawing plans for the architect, which in turns goes back to inspections for approvals, because now the weight bearing that you have on the mezzanine changes everything. And then, which I didn't realize, but I do realize, I should realize, that when you're ordering a building, those points change as well in terms of structure and how that building looks, based off the foundation. And the other thing I didn't realize was, when you're putting drains in for culinary, and this is something new, you gotta know where your drains are, so you know where you put it in for your foundation, in the right spots, and where you're gonna put your cookware. So this is not like a shell building that the county had just put up, like economic development just put up. It's just not a poured slab with a regular shell building over it. There was a number of aspects that took along the way that changed the inspection processes, that they had to go back and get re-stamped and re-engineered to make sure everything was on go. So my concern was there was a holdup at the beginning, that maybe we weren't getting things done quick enough. And I'll be honest with you, we called a meeting on December 15th, I believe, with the county, and David Stout and my crowd, and everybody met, and everybody worked together to really put in perspective of how fast we're trying to do the timeline and get it done. And I commend David over there for what he does with his staff. But when the Department of Insurance delays things for a couple months, and then that puts everything on the back burner, and we've changed some things. Along the way, after December 15th, is what happened was they go out and they survey for all the footings, and I'm expecting that the foundation is going to be put up quickly, right away, and to survey as many footings that we had. And I learned this as well yesterday from our conversations with our contractor. When you build a footing, you pour the concrete, right, and form it at the time you're building the footing. It's not like you go out and do the footings and then pour the concrete. They do this in pieces. When you do the footing, you form it up and pour the concrete. Well, the temperature's dropped, and it's not like I'm up north where they put additives into the cement for the cement to work. In North Carolina, when it becomes 32 degrees or below, you're not pouring concrete, period. So we've had a delay of not only the snow coming, we've had the delay of not being able to pour concrete, and we've had some rain. And then we had, to be honest with you, the contractor that we had that was coming to this site, and I talked to you can talk to the contractor in here today, and being very informative, that the contractor was backlogged already as well from what he was dealing with. So by the time they're coming, they're not coming, I think, until next week. So there's been so many delays that by the time we talked about this last week and looked at the time frame, and I took the scheduler from where we started to where we're at now, and I'll be glad to share that with each one of you. I have them in a folder. We're about 2 months past from where we wanted to be, and I'll share that to each one of you in here. Knowing that we've already on a tight frame, aggressive as we are, and trying to upfit like we wanted to upfit, I made the decision that I thought was best that we hold off and make sure that we can open up one complete building and do it right, and not do it where we open up a part of a section that possibly would be done, or we have kids scheduled and it not be ready, because we're early January still, and here we had our second day of snow, and Mother Nature's not working with us. I wanted to make sure it's done right. Now, I'm disappointed, more than anybody in here, about not being able to meet the timeline, but in construction, it's normally 50-50 in meeting the timelines that you have. I will say, the same folks that are doing this building are doing Richlands. We're on time. And that's amazing, because they were ahead of schedule to begin with, and because we were ahead of schedule, even with the delays, we're on time. That was a question I had, so that's an update on that. But I just wanted, and I will continue to give you updates on this as we move forward, and I'll keep my hands involved on this, and I will take oversight on, should have recognized and looked at the schedule. I'm in my position, I haven't done it for a while, but I will do it from here on out to make sure if we have other questions, I can address it to the board on an earlier basis.
Do you have you said you have the timeline, you're talking about the schedule
I have
for
a time, I have
the process?
I have a complete timeline that the county provided me, and I appreciate that. I know, David, you're in here, I appreciate the timeline your staff's done, they spent time on it. I have a timeline from our contractor as well. I put the 2 and 2 together, and I looked at it, I looked at the schedule that we had, and it all adds up and makes sense when you look at it from that perspective. But the biggest pieces was what we added to the project on the design build as we were trying to got additional funds. to make sure we had some things in there we wanted to have in there, so.
And that's where the confusion comes for me, because when we approved this in July of last year, it was my impression that we were doing the shell and the mezzanine at that time. So when did the design issue come into play if we didn't get a permit until, for that portion of it, until December 15th? So if we had all of that back in June, it was submitted to the county back in June for the initial planning stage, because it had to go through a special use permit, and that took almost 2 months for it to get through that process. I am assuming that the initial process, although we approved it in July of last year, the initial architect drawings that would have had to been submitted along with the planning process would have included the entire process, I think, because we didn't break it into sections until July 25th when it came to us.
Right, so it was included when we first initially did it, you're exactly right. The whole plan was from point A to point B. But along the way, we had to figure out if the mezzanine, we needed to have that mezzanine in phase one or not have it in phase one from that point of view. When we realized that we had the money to complete the whole, because we didn't know how long it was gonna be, Mr. Williams, in terms of finding the money to complete the whole project and when that would come through. If it was, we knew the short session, by the time phase one was gonna open up, would have been already over with. So we weren't counting on really the general session, with Senator Brown or anybody else providing some resources that we currently didn't have unless the federal government came through like they did, and we didn't want to count on that for sure. So we were trying to make sure, when do we add the to this project with the other phases. So part of that is we didn't need to do the mezzanine right now, we could do it later. We added it back in when we knew the funding was coming through, which caused another delay itself.
That was after we approved it on July 25th?
Yes.
Yes, I didn't know that either, but I think if there's a mistake, it was that we just were not informed
Right.
that was going to be a different bid. I didn't know that either.
So the mezzanine is part of the second phase?
No, it's already included in the first one. It's the process of putting that back in. You're not adding that into the second bid. It was in the first bid, but was there a use for that, in that first bid to go ahead and do it now within the time frame to get it open? Am I correct on that?
No, sir.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Sounded
Yes, sir. In the bids that you got back in last July, the columns supporting the mezzanine was in that bid. The actual mezzanine, the structure for the mezzanine, the joist, the concrete was not in that price. But in the meantime, we had it basically scheduled to where the contractor could actually price out that, and that is a change order. It wasn't
Oh, that's
in
right.
that
That's
July price.
That's a change.
And that's how it all started, as
That's
Mr.
right.
South said, design build, that's how it started progressing. And that's what we got to work with.
That's right, that's correct. We added it because we were able to do that with the pricing that we had.
Well, that's a big change order.
I guess.
Questions? Any other questions?
So where do we stand at now? I mean, we don't have a pad poured yet.
Right, so the contractor's supposed to come in, I think, on the schedule is, the 22nd is when they're going to start tomorrow. They're starting tomorrow.
The concrete contract?
Yes.
So we've got plumbing, we've got electrical, everything's supposed to be running agreement, we just need concrete.
No, the rough end's not done. He's coming and starting footings tomorrow, so we'll start perimeter footings. And once those are in, that's when the under slab rough end will begin. And I think, Mr. Williams, mentioned that earlier, typical school project is a 2 to 3 year project. So it was pretty aggressive from the start. And certainly it was doable if everything happened like it should, and on, following timelines, but in construction and permitting and design, I mean, there was a lot of stuff added to this building after the initial phase. I mean, with this being a 2-phase, it was more complicated than putting out one set of plans, bidding it, and one contractor building it. So, I think it was really just a perfect storm. I mean, nobody's fault. It was a good idea out of the gate, and, instead of putting it in place in 12 months, you're probably gonna put it in place in 18 months.
So Steve, I agree with you. I think we were pretty ambitious.
Right. It's
And,
certainly doable under perfect conditions,
Right.
but we all know the world I work in every day is not perfect conditions.
Well, I've said this may be a godsend to us anyway, even though it's pushed us back, because now we'll be able to get in there and get everything done in a proper way instead of rushing.
And you're getting the entire building upfitted, which I don't think was the original
Right.
intent, but you're going to get it in place right, and it's going to be ready to go.
And we didn't have the money to do
I
it.
would hope that as we go forward on this and other construction projects, 'cause we're not gonna stop building anytime soon. I hope we could have something set up where maybe we could have periodic, quarterly, monthly, some type of briefings for the current construction projects we got, so we're not blindsided and the public's not blindsided on these issues.
And I think this was just a different project. Earl, you had your
Yeah, I was
hand
going
up.
to follow up with a comment that you made. I mean, I think, again, we're all disappointed because after 10 to 12 years,
Yeah.
we've been hoping and praying that this project would finally get off the ground, and it did. And a lot of things started to come into play in a very short period of time. Mr. Kellum, you got 2.5, 3 years to build a school. You got less than about a year to build this large building. Now, again, it's not like a
Shell building.
shell building. You've got a lot of components involved. I see it, like you said, as a godsend. I see it as an advantage from a program standpoint. I know, Mr. Shannon, I think you had over 600 kids to travel to Duplin County to speak and to hear experts in their field. Here, we will have a building pretty much in place that would enhance the recruiting aspect for these programs. They don't have to travel to Jones or Duplin County. They're coming here, and to me, that will be an enhancement. I see it as a positive thing, and we take fifth graders for orientation programs at the middle school. We take eighth graders to the high school for orientation. Now we get to take these kids to the actual plant, the actual facility. And I think it's going to snowball, and, you know, I lived off of Piney Green Road, and we all know that it was supposed to be a 5-year project in the 7th.
Yes, ma'am.
I have forgotten now that it's finally completed, but this too shall pass. So we can sit around and point fingers to everybody we want to, even nature. But however, I think it's going to be an advantage to our school system and our students.
Madam Chair and members of the board, again, I apologize. We'll make sure we give timely updates on changes, and if there's changes on the scheduler when we're looking at it, you know, and, you know, I get, you know, more and more information and knowing how we go about things and getting correct information to be able to give to you in terms of, you know, if we fall behind on something, obviously I'll give you a heads up and how we might catch up, and we don't certainly want you to be blindsided in the future, and or do I want to bring you any bad news? I always want to bring you good news in terms of what we're trying to do in regards to this career center. I'm excited about the career center. I just wanted to make sure we were doing it right. I knew that making those phone calls to you was not going to be a happy moment, nor was it for really, you know, any county or anybody else, but there was a lot of understanding in terms of what we were doing. My conversations with the other superintendents, as well as those who were involved, also understood we were under a tight timeline, so I don't think we made anybody mad in that perspective, and I do want to make sure that we open the place up where everybody's, you know, going to be excited and the opportunity is going to be there for those other skills. And it's a work in progress still for us as we, you know, when we're doing the upfitting for equipment and those type of things. So we'll update you on that, and we'll update you on any other things that we possibly have coming forward with new construction, those things. And one thing that might help us out in the future, Madam Chair, is we've talked about even doing a part-time hire for a project person to come on, and that person can work directly with the scheduler, because I'll be honest with you, Steve, and so many things that we got on, and Dusty, we pull them left and right with the same amount of people who are growing the school system. To have somebody that's involved in the construction business that may know the right question to ask Steve, or ask the right question to Randy, that's in that area, and then come back and make sure the scheduler's on time and report back to me. I'll be more accurate in coming back to you as a board. So we'll look at that as we go forward, not as a full-time thing, but maybe as the consultation.
So what is projected completion now?
November?
With pros phase.
The proposed phase will be end of November.
Yours will be complete in August?
August, that is correct.
Are
I
we
think
look,
our contract timeline is 240 days, I think, from permitting, which December the 15th, somewhere thereabouts, but yeah, our current schedule's projected, we'll be out of there, late August.
And that's the other thing the board I didn't mention was the permitting, when the permit is done on December 15th, so that's the actual time frame that
Our contract starts.
our contract, their contract starts.
You know, and lastly, this is not the typical process that y'all have built every other school in Onslow County, so.
Right.
You know, this is new for all parties involved. I mean, you know,
It is different.
It's a different timeline and, you know, it's not trying to put any blame anywhere. It's, you know, y'all were building this thing differently than every other school you built. It's completely designed. You put it out to bid and a contractor's got whatever, 12, 14 months or whatever, so.
I missed your comment with.
So the time frame, which I didn't realize, it actually does not start for Quadrant until the permitting's approved. So December 15th was that date when it started from there.
So we're looking at occupancy somewhere around December.
Certainly prior to y'all bringing kids in.
So, yeah, we'll have, basically 6 months to equip, upfit it,
And that's good.
And that's good.
That's good. Not that we like it, but it's good.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you for that, all of you that contributed. I know that there are people here that were just here for the Regional Skill Center update and any questions that might have been directed to them. If you want to leave, feel free to. If you don't want to, stay and enjoy the show.
Rick, I would like a copy of that if you'll pass those out.
The next item, we'll move back up to A, is on the class ranking.
It's coming. Thank you. You got these copies? It's coming.
Who's taking the lead?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Will?
Yes, sir.
We'll stand wherever you want, in the middle of the table if you'd like.
I'm very comfortable right here. Thank you, I appreciate it. Oh, I'm good. Thank you. All right, members of the board, Madam Chair, on behalf of the high school principals of Onslow County, I'm here to request a revision to the OCS policy 3450, which proposes that the district eliminates the identification of valedictorian and salutatorian based on student GPA and transitions to the Latin honors system. A significant policy change initiated by the North Carolina State Board and the Institutes of Higher Education have raised many concerns among the high school principals. In 2015, NC State Board Policy DS 116-11, high school transcript standards, changed the quality point values assigned to courses for the class of 2019 and also altered the grading scale for all students. Prior to these changes, students were assigned letter grades based on a 7-point grading scale. Grades were recorded on the student's transcript using a letter grade that may have included pluses and minuses based on the percentage earned. A student's GPA was calculated using the sliding scale that converted the numerical percentage earned to a quality point value that was earned. So for example, if a student earned a 99, they would have received an A+, which would have earned 4 quality points. A student at that time who would have earned a 93 would have received an A- and would have earned 3.62 quality points. Currently, all of our students are assigned a letter grade based on a 10-point scale. The grades are recorded on the student's transcript as a numerical value, and quality points are assigned accordingly. So now a student who earned that 99 would be assigned an A, not an A+, and would earn the same number of quality points, which would be 4 points that they did previously. But the student who earned a 93 also would have that A recorded and would earn In addition to the changes in the grading scale, the University of North Carolina and NC Community College systems have changed the quality points earned by courses starting with the students entering high school for the first time in 2015-16. So our current junior class, so next year's graduating class. And so what we have with them, we have our standard courses. The quality points for GPA calculation are assigned according to the standard 4.0. They receive no additional quality points. For our honors courses, the state course weighting system awards the equivalent of 1 quality point, or previously awarded 1 quality point. Effective with this class of 2019, the weight for honors courses shall only have an impact of 0.5, or 1/2 of a quality point. And then for our advanced courses, the state weighting system again was 2 quality points that were earned for taking an AP or an IB course. Effective with the class of 2019, the weight for the AP and IB shall be 1 quality point. So again, the course values and course weights have changed. So we've had 2 major impacts there. We've changed from a 7-point to a 10-point scale. That went into effect immediately for all students. The course weights were being phased in. And so if I were in a class sitting next to an upperclassman, the number of quality points would be different for me if I'm in an honors course. The upperclassman next to me may be getting 5 points, and I may be earning 4.5. Okay. So what we're looking at, again, we look at some of our challenges that we have. It's just really trying to identify a new method to recognize our students. And with the Latin honor system, we're looking at setting a mark for students that would be universal. And so I'm setting my own personal goals to try to reach that mark, which would earn that designation. So I'm not so much in competition or feeling the need to be better than the student sitting right next to me. So with this system, students who earn a GPA of 4.25 or higher would earn summa cum laude designation. Students who earn a GPA of 4.249 to 4.0 would earn a magna cum laude designation. And students earning a GPA of 3.99 to 3.75 would earn cum laude designation. So again, we're looking at almost certainly a different way of recognizing students and recognizing multiple students. So some of the concerns that our principals had, and again, this has been a topic that they had been working on previous to me coming on board, but something that was a concern to them. They like the idea of recognizing the hard work of many students instead of recognizing the few. They also feel that students would be more inclined to take elective courses in fine arts and career and technical education and not be so driven by just taking courses that have higher quality weights. They feel that students would be more motivated to earn a GPA that receives one of the special recognitions that's listed on the PowerPoint. Also, it would eliminate the concern that small differences in GPAs could lead to a large difference in class ranking. So now again, with the weights being so close, many GPAs are going to be very close. And if you look at college admissions, class rank most certainly is one of the significant things that they look at. So now we're possibly eliminating that as a deterrent or detractor from our students being admitted. They also want to encourage and recognize excellence in the spirit of, again, cooperation, not the intense competition that sometimes sets one student against another. And lastly, it aligns to how students are recognized at the post-secondary level. So with the policy changes that we discussed and for the reasons that we just mentioned, the high school principals are recommending that we move away from the identification of valedictorian and salutatorian and transition to this new Latin systems recognition. We appreciate your time and consideration. I'll answer any questions that you have at this time.
Okay, before we open it to questions, let's have a motion to get it on the floor.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Now, questions, comments?
Forgive me, but this is every kid gets a trophy. That's what this is.
Say that again,
Education has
please.
been moving to, I said, this policy is every kid gets a trophy. This is, you're taking away valedictorian and salutatorian, yet in the policy, you're saying you're still gonna maintain the class rank. So there's a number out there that the decimal point can be added to pick a winner. I mean, I can understand recognizing more people, but why not still have a valedictorian and salutatorian? Why can't we have the top 2 class members and then just add this to it?
You are correct. The state policy does require that class rank and the GPA are required uniformly across, and the transcript cannot be altered. It does allow some flexibility to go back and look at other means for trying to identify valedictorian and salutatorian, and that could be something that
I think we're gonna have several students at the high school level that spent the last 2 years probably working toward a valedictorian or salutatorian position, and then we're gonna pull it out from under them 2 years into it.
many of our principals share that same concern, that this policy was not put into place previously in that communication, so that was most certainly something that came up.
2 of the large school districts that implemented this in 2016, Wake County and Durham County, looked at it a little differently. Wake County, when they implemented their system, they went with the straight Latin system. Durham County went with the Latin system that still selects the valedictorian and salutatorian. I would propose that we put it back in, that we have that. If we have class rankings, we could have both. There's no reason that it has to be mutually exclusive.
Well, we still, under this, we still maintain the class ranking system. We have to.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
We just don't give the recognition for valedictorian or salutatorian.
I don't, correct me or enlighten me, why we would begin this for the 2015 freshman class. Why wouldn't we begin it with next year's freshman class?
Part of the reason for the change was because of the course weights changing, and there's a concern among many of the high school principals that we could have 10 or more valedictorians, because that GPA and quality points are no longer
Okay.
separated by 2.
Right.
And that applies to
I
next
understand.
year's graduating class.
Is there a mechanism that we could use that would be equitable for the students if we ended up with 10 at a student, or at a school rather, that would be on a even level, even if you take it out to the 18th decimal point, that there's still 10 of them that would qualify? Is there any process that we can put in place, like Durham did? I'm not sure what they use as their delineating factors to still select those 2 for each class, but they certainly use something to do that. They're much larger than us, so I would think that their schools are much larger. I just don't know that we have to be mutually exclusive for do this or that.
I'm most certain that there is a possible solution out there that we could look at. Again, the state policy does permit us to go back and look at grades and transcripts and to re-rank based on some local criteria. I just don't know if we've had any time to explore that or that's been a consideration.
Now, this aligns, this is the way the universities do this, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Because they have multiple, multiple number of students who receive this designation or distinction.
I believe the universities aren't using Valensality, as
Yeah.
a differential anymore. They do use pass rank. The advantages, and we had this conversation, the advantages, of course, I'm a career technical person. I always thought more kids should be involved in that. A lot of them get shut out from taking that because they're afraid to take it because it doesn't have the quality points that they need for Valensal. Be honest with you, if you didn't have the Valensal, then the children wouldn't have to worry about it. They would open up to take more of those skill classes, be honest with you. That down the road, that may open up what they're gonna do in the long range, one way or the other.
Yeah.
So I understand where you're coming from, on that. It's just it's a process that you look at it from different lenses. And my lens says, you know, I love for kids to be more open, to take more opportunity through the arts and through the careers, technical. But if you ask a child why they, and there's been a few of them, mine was one of them, I couldn't take more of those because they were trying to reach for that Val Sal role. You know, it's a disadvantage sometimes, because if they had actually taken a career tech and they didn't like what they were doing in college, they had to come back and really discover what they really did like. So,
And back to your question about everyone receiving recognition. If you look at the class GPAs at our current high schools, we're still looking at recognizing about the top 20% of the students. So it's most certainly not everyone receiving special recognition.
Well, currently, we have the valedictorian, salutatorian. What about the student who comes in third or fourth? What kind of recognition do they get? I mean, I never had to worry about competing with them.
You were thinking, Lottie, weren't you?
You know, thank goodness I took the arts.
thank you, Lottie.
But what
Thank you,
about
Lottie.
that student who comes in third, fourth, and fifth? What did they get?
They're gonna get a summa.
Get a what?
They're gonna get a summa.
Yeah, but currently, the current program.
Well, they're recognized, aren't they, as honor students
Yes, they are.
at the high school level?
Not everywhere.
If they meet the criteria to be an NC Scholar,
Right.
honor student. But again, that's up to the individual school. Not every school has that criteria set up. And this will provide something that will be very consistent.
I see the cum laude, summa, and the magna as a more of an incentive that that child is recognized in those categories, because it gives them something to look forward to work toward at the college level, even the community college. So that's my, but I know it's two former principals dealing with valedictorian. It's not just a battle, it's almost a war.
It's a war.
sometimes.
It is a war,
It's a war.
and those top 10 students, they'll not take a band course.
Exactly.
They'll
Or a
take,
career.
because they're, or a career course, because they're concerned about that GPA. But this opens it up where kids can take different things.
Right.
Certainly has its pluses, and the valedictorian salutatorian has a plus too.
How do the principals feel, Will,
Yeah.
about, I know you've mentioned their comments, how do they feel now about designating one student that is going to represent that category, or have they said anything about it?
That's our major concern. We met with them back in December. We had a face-to-face meeting, and then I told them, did some survey just to ask them what that process would be like if they had 10 students. I'm not sure what that process would be like, and I think that puts them in a very difficult situation to try to narrow that down, maybe coming up with some criteria. But, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you might have 10 students who come out with the same, so that's gonna be a tough call.
I just have a real hard time approving it without a valedictorian or salutatorian in the process. I think in life, and we all know this because we've all gone through different paths in our life, life isn't always fair. Those people that work the hardest sometimes in different career paths get a lot further ahead. Some people go into the technical trades, some people go into the arts, some go to college and they go on to after college, to additional college. They work themselves into professional positions, doctors, attorneys. There's a variety of different things that people go for. And generally, I would think, if you're looking at the people at the top of the class, those people at the top of the class probably are more likely to go into those professions. So, pardon?
But they're still gonna be the top of the class if their class ranks one.
I understand, they're still going to have the summa cum laude if they're at the top of the class, okay? But I have to agree with Mr. Merritt in the fact that I agree that we give those. I like the classifications. I like the fact that we're recognizing more students. But life isn't always fair. And when you start delineating down to one person fighting against another for a tenth of a point, I understand that may be stressful, but that's what life is all about. That's what happens. So I would make the proposal that if we're considering approving this today, that we add that back in, at minimum, give the school principals at the individual schools the authority to go forward with that, with a val and sal, if they so choose.
How many LEAs across the state are doing this?
Right now, some recent polls are showing it's about 50% of the school districts nationally have made the transition.
Is this something the college board recommends this as well?
The College Board has been talking about it because there's less emphasis now on just class rank. They're starting to look at other ways. When they go to admit students, looking at GPAs and ACT scores, but this was one of their recommendations, yes.
Why would, I'm confused on that because whether they're gonna take into account class rank or not, why would they want us to change? I mean, they could just look at rank 1 and not give any weight. You see what I'm saying? I don't, why the college would try to,
And I don't have a response for that.
Questions or comments? Now's the time to get them out on the table.
If you allow one high school to
Good
choose
point.
to have valedictorian and salutatorian, what, will that open up a can of worms in other districts? Well, so-and-so does this, they allow it, but you won't allow it here. To me, are you creating, or are you opening up another can of worms?
Well,
That's my question.
it takes the integrity, to me, of the policy away. If you're gonna say to the principal, do what you wanna do.
I thought the policy already was open-ended, that gave the principals that latitude to explore other avenues, with recognition, that is.
Well, they can do honors, they can do, if you're in the Beta Club or the National Honor Society, you get recognized in a different way. It could be in music.
Academies.
Academies, music honors, there are lots of different ways they do that, but that's done throughout, almost every school does it. Same way, Paul, you and Brock know you always sit down together as administrators and do that at the high school level.
the way the current policy is currently written, the principal does not have to designate a valedictorian or salutatorian, correct? I mean, the strikeout that we've got here, it says high schools may designate a valedictorian or salutatorian. It says they may.
All of us did, I
But
can
they
tell
do,
you that.
yes.
They do.
Currently do, yes.
Well, let me just answer this to Jonathan, or say this, not answering your question, is that any school who's done something different, he's the man who's getting the grief from it.
Right,
And we need to have a consistency,
yes, we do.
whether we like it or not. We've got to have a consistency for the, for that. Yes, we do.
Is there any reason we can't put that back in there for those two classifications then?
I think we can do anything we want to.
I make a motion that we do.
You already have a motion on
We already have a motion on the floor.
I would amend the motion then to include that we allow the principals to designate a valedictorian and a salutatorian.
Okay, Bob has a motion. Who made the first motion for us to get on here? Jody, do you know? Brock? So it would be up to Brock if he wants to change that motion. Okay, so repeat that again.
I would change it to, I would put back in, high schools may designate a valedictorian or salutatorian in accordance with regulations and procedures established by the superintendent or designee.
Okay,
Oh,
you like that?
can we discuss that a little bit?
Yes, yeah, we're going to discuss it.
Okay, do you need a second on
We need a
that?
second on that motion. We had a second.
And Rick this would be a problem for him, but that will really be a problem, don't say may. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, if Jacksonville High School has a valedictorian and salutatorian, and White Oak High School doesn't designate one,
you got a problem. So either all of them do it or none of them do it.
That's right.
That was
I
my,
agree.
that was my concern too.
I agree.
And I
I'm telling
agree
you
with
right
that.
now, I've been there, done that.
The current policy does those include May, so if we want to change that, and I will amend that, high schools shall designate a valedictorian in accordance with.
Do we have a second to that change?
Second,
Okay, we have a second. Anybody want to discuss that?
Can you repeat
Okay,
and make sure that we all?
go ahead, Bob.
The amendment would be, high schools shall designate a valedictorian and salutatorian in accordance with regulations and procedures established by the superintendent or designee.
Okay,
We're just adding that back in.
okay, are we still discussing?
we'll start,
Okay. And I'm in favor of that, by the way. But then you're gonna have another problem. Going by this, you may have 10 valedictorians with the same GPA.
well, that's right back to where we are.
I know, and then,
Yeah.
I know, but I'm just,
I know.
okay,
That's what they're trying to avoid.
right, but then it's going to become a real problem for the principal, because I'm telling you right now, you're gonna have parents marching in that office. Why is Earl Taylor valedictorian and not Rick Stout? Because they have the same GPA. With this, because they fight for those courses, they know what they're taking and what they're not. It's very possible that you're gonna come up with numerous students with the same GPA. They are dead serious about that. I'm just,
And it's ugly.
doggone
As a
right.
former high school principal, it gets really ugly. at the very
I
end.
think there are things, when you're talking about the valedictorian, salutatorian, and all the high school principals could come together and come up with a solution. Not just GPA, there are other things that could be considered too. Clubs, leadership positions, things like that. You're gonna have to have something to distinguish, otherwise, I don't know how you're going to, David. But I'm in favor of valedictorian and salutatorian.
I think, Paul, I agree. I think it could be more than
Than
just
GPA.
the GPA. But I think the principal should give you the input, Will. I think the bottom line is though, that once you do that, it should be up to the superintendent to decide, is that what we're gonna do? And everybody would do it,
Right.
and it come back to this board to make sure that we agree.
I agree.
Okay, because it does, in what I put back in there actually goes to that with regulations and procedures established by the superintendent or his designee. So if we were to establish those procedures of how we're going to pick that, then come back and vote on that. But normally we don't vote on procedures.
No, but if we're not specific in here, what would stop anyone from saying, well, this is what we think you need to do, and you know, this principal may not want to, this one wants it even stricter. At least if we're giving them the guidelines. Beth, how do you feel? You sit back there and talk.
Tell us something.
Get us off the
Talk
hook.
to us.
I have mixed feelings, just as all of you do. I do think that the high school principals brought this to us as wanting a change, so I want to make sure that their voices are being heard. I think that, as we're talking, the valedictorian, salutatorian is based on GPA, so when we start adding in other criteria, then I think we're getting away from what a valedictorian and salutatorian is. When you start adding in things like leadership and other things, that becomes very subjective. I don't think that's what valedictorian and salutatorian is. I think it really is based on GPA. And so, I am supportive of the Latin because I do think it encourages students to work to their very best. It's like a personal time. And I also think that if we look at trends in education, we're starting to see the blending of high schools and colleges, as in early colleges. Our kids are taking college career promise courses, et cetera, and so this is also a blending of that. I think it is difficult when you have multiple kids. I would, with the same GPA, if we kept valedictorian and salutatorian in there, I would say that if you had 10 students with the valedictorian, same GPA, then you have 10 valedictorians. I would not recommend that you begin to have other criteria to wean that down. I would say that you would have 10. I think if we're worried about the current students that are juniors who've already been vying for this place, that a compromise would be to start this with the current freshman class, and we would have to maybe have a couple of years where there were multiple valedictorians in place if you wanted to, I think that would be a compromise.
I could live with that.
And I'm okay with having 5 valedictorians. I mean, if 5 of them achieve it, they achieve it.
Madam Chair, there's
Yes.
another sentence in there that probably needs to be struck if we're gonna go along with the valedictorian and salutatorian status, where we have the addition while, which reads, while the board encourages broad means of recognizing student achievement, high school principals shall not use class rank to designate a valedictorian or salutatorian beyond the graduating class of 2018.
That's right.
So that would have to be rephrased.
And Madam Chair, if I may, one last thing. I know that Dr. Eason had started this process with the principals, and last summer, meeting with the high school principals, before Mr. Lane came in. I do believe that I do want to reiterate and cannot underscore enough the concept of our district really wanting students to partake in arts and CTE courses. And even staff members here sharing stories of their own students who had the choice of vying for valedictorian or taking band or an arts course and having to make those choices. And so the principals felt like if we wanted to emphasize the whole child, that this is a policy that would in fact be aligned with those values of emphasizing the whole child.
Well, I see that as it's presented, that it is giving students a level playing field to be summa cum laude or magna cum laude, no matter what program direction they take. And I think that's the intent, isn't it?
Would CTE students be able to receive cum laude, those distinctions, because there's no weight to those, there's no,
No, there's no weight to those.
Sir?
You do have some honors courses in CTE.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
But a lot of the entry ones are gonna be standard level courses.
Yeah.
But when they start to go down that path, that's when they start to eliminate themselves from being consideration for a balance out.
What if they're in an academy? Does that academy have a different weight?
Not the academy itself, it's all but done by the individual course.
Okay.
It's all done by individual course.
Well, we have a motion, and I think we're all kind of in a quandary about this. We have a motion on the floor that the high school shall designate a valedictorian and salutatorian. And I don't know if we want to have Will come back and reword this and bring it back to us on our February meeting. Do we want to take care of acting on it today?
I'd recommend maybe we go back to the table, because if it's not a workable solution, I'd like to see them stay in there. I'd like to have both of them, but it has to be a workable solution that we can, even if it's multiple candidates that reach those levels. Include the Latin designations. We would have to rework it considerably, like the attorney has provided with it, to take that out if we just do that. So that's in conflict with the change that I had recommended, so I would have to
Withdraw that.
I'd have to withdraw that at this point and go back to the table and see. But if we can't work it out, if you and the staff can't come up with a workable solution, then let's take another look at it. Let's table it for now.
And what I would say as a suggestion to the compromise of extending this not until next year's freshman class. I think that was a compromise that Dr. Foley.
I like
You
that.
know, that we honor the Val Sal
Right.
until the incoming freshman class would come in with the understanding of what would, they have as a prerequisite in terms of meeting those honors.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I would ask you to come back with us with it in print.
I don't know,
That's okay.
I understand what you're trying to do. It's a time-honored tradition.
Change is
It's
tough.
I know, change is tough,
You know,
exactly.
nobody
I
wants
agree with
change.
that, okay? But that is something that has been going on for many, many years.
You know, maybe, well, we need to make sure that we're gonna let you go back and look at this. We'll vote on it in just a second. I would suggest that you maybe contact some of the systems around us that are, and see how they're doing it, and have they done it before? Is it working out? And maybe you could share that with us just as kind of make us feel a little bit better that we're on the right track. I think all of us here understand the reason for it.
I do.
And I'm very much in favor of looking at what we can do to make it happen. Mr. Ridge, so, Mr. Williams is willing to withdraw his motion. Would you be willing to change your motion now to table it until, do we have a second on that?
Second, yeah.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. And I hope Leanne Winter would be happy with me for trying to conduct that under Robert's Rules of Order properly. Would y'all like to take like a 3-minute break, real quickly?
Yeah.
Earl's not here, but we'll go on and begin this discussion on the next policy, and it's the unexpired term fulfillment, and this is based on, and Evan may want to interject this is based on the new law.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, members of the board, this is policy code 2115 is under your consideration for revisions here. I'll just read you the proposed revisions. It reads, if a vacancy in the membership of the Board of Education occurs due to death, resignation, or otherwise of a member elected on a nonpartisan basis in 2014 or 2016, which is what would apply to everyone here, the vacancy will be filled in accordance with General Statute 115C-37F, which provides that the seat will be filled by a person appointed by the remaining members of the board to serve until the next election of board members, at which time the remaining unexpired term will be filled by election. So that's kind of status quo where we are today. But we know this is changing to a partisan scenario in 2018 with the November elections. And as such, this next paragraph falls in line with North Carolina General Statute 115C. And it reads, if a vacancy in the membership of the board occurs to death, resignation, or otherwise of a member who is elected on a partisan basis beginning in 2018, the vacancy will be filled in accordance with General Statute 115C-37.1. As provided by this statute, the board will consult with the county executive committee of the party of the vacating board member if elected as a nominee of a political party, and appoint the person recommended by that party executive committee if the executive committee makes a recommendation within 30 days of the occurrence of the vacancy.
What happens if they don't make a recommendation within 30 days? The board,
I would assume that's right. I would assume if the party doesn't make a recommendation within that time frame, the board would then choose the successor, as they do now, but there's not clear language on that.
Would it be?
we have a motion to accept this as presented with the new laws.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Question, Jonathan?
I did, I guess it would be the same that the unaffiliated candidate. You know, they went through, got the signatures, and got onto the ballot and run it unaffiliated, the board would choose their.
I called about that, don't know what they're gonna do.
So, okay.
The law provides for a means to elect an affiliated, but doesn't provide that in the language that they did, so I don't know.
That's correct.
And I think that they should get those things straight pretty soon, but I talked to Rose Whitehurst, and, you know, they have a dilemma waiting on the Raleigh Board of Elections.
If we approve today, would anything stop us from coming back later and adding?
Oh, never.
Okay.
No other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Next one, Mr. Irwin.
All right, moving on. This next policy for your consideration is Policy Code 2110, dealing with board member qualifications. Just some syntax in the very beginning here. Any person possessing the qualifications for election to public office as provided for in Article 6, Section 6 of the Constitution of North Carolina, and who is a qualified voter resident of the election district in which he or she seeks to be elected is eligible to serve as a member of the Board of Education. And there's a conflict of interest provision that stays in place, the next paragraph. Membership in terms of office, the new provision reads, candidates for election to the Onslow County Board of Education shall be nominated at the same time and manner as other county officers. All elections are partisan and are to be held at the time of the November general election in even-numbered years. That comes from Senate Bill 253. There's also an oath of office revision which changes the oath that board members take when they swear in, and it reads a little differently. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of North Carolina, and that I will honestly, faithfully discharge my duties as a member of the Onslow County Board of Education to the best of my ability, so help me God. And the last addition there is if a board member enters on the duties of his or her office before taking, subscribing, and filing the oath of office, he or she will be rejected from office. And that provision comes from North Carolina General Statute 14-229, which is entitled Misconduct in Public Office. That's where they've added that language.
Okay, this is presented. May I have a motion to get this on the floor if we're going to talk about it? Motion?
Motion to.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any questions or comments?
Yes, Madam Chair. I've got just a couple of it. The oath of office that we list here in the policy, the revised, or as it exists right now, is different than what we actually administer, at least what I was administering. I don't have a copy of the other ones, but the oath that we have in the policy is considerably different than the one that we have that we administer. I would recommend that either we change the documentation that we do at the time we take the oath and put that in the policy, or we change, if we accept the policy change that we're looking at here today, then we change the form that we're actually doing that oath on. So I think those need to mesh up with one another.
What Mr. Williams is referring to is the oath of office that we have is a little bit more detailed and probably has more teeth than this. Does anyone, he's proposing that we take the one, all of us have that. We were sworn in under the policy that the oath that he has, that we take that and substitute it for this one.
So the one that's printed here, that's actually in statute.
That's in statute.
The minimum.
Right, the minimum.
Can't we just include this in our present one?
Well, parts of it are.
Well, parts of it
It's a
are.
blend.
Right.
Well, but see, each of us, Jonathan, every one of us in here did do the lengthier one,
Right.
which does have a little bit more meat to it. And it does, I'm not opposed to doing that at all. So Bob has a motion.
I would
Do you want to make a motion?
I would make a motion that, and I believe Jody can probably provide us the language that's included in that. I would make a motion that our changes to the oath of office that we have in current policy are changed to the oath of office
That we
that
actually,
we actually take.
would y'all like to see that before you make that decision? Do you need to do that? If you, Jody can go,
I have a copy of it.
okay,
Do
can
you want
you?
me to read it?
Sure, that might, will that be okay? to everyone.
Or would one of you like to read it? All right. State of North Carolina, County of Onslow, I, person's name, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, so help me God. I do further solemnly swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of North Carolina and to the constitutional powers and authorities which are or may be established for the government thereof, and that I will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend the Constitution of the state, not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States, to the best of my knowledge and ability, so help me God. I do further solemnly swear that I will well and truly serve the state of North Carolina and Onslow County in the office of the member of the Onslow County Board of Education, and that I will well and truly, according to my knowledge, power, and ability, do and execute all things belonging to the office of Board of Education member, so long as I shall continue in office, so help me God.
Any questions for Jody? So, Bob, you want to?
Well, I further want to, that's the first part of the amendment that I have, I
Okay.
guess. Because I also have a concern over the statement that we've included, if a board member enters on the duties. Eric, you've eloquently said that that comes out of another statute. It's Article 31, misconduct in public office, to wit, Section 14-229, acted as an officer before qualifying as such. And it's actually a much larger, let me put it this way, what we have proposing to be put into, what we have proposing to go into the policy is truncated from parts of the actual excerpt. And since it is related to, if I may, I'll read what is in the statute. If any officer shall enter on the duties of his office before he executes and delivers to the authority entitled to receive the same the bonds required by law, and qualifies in taking by taking and subscribing and filling in the proper office the oath of office prescribed, he shall be guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor and shall be ejected from his office. So it's actually a criminal statute that is being referenced in there. If we're going to excerpt a portion of that, even though we do reference General Statute 14-229, I think it should be more clearly delineated in there. Let's use the entire process or the entire site, or put that in there, what I had just read, as opposed to that. Now, I know that this probably came from the School Board Association because I was able to find that language in some other board policies in other school districts, but I'm concerned over the fact that we're not giving people who read this board policy adequate notice that they may be violating the law if they.
Well, that's
actually
why
do
the
it.
legal references are there.
I understand. I just think it should be clarified. I think we ought to actually state what it says in the law as opposed to truncate it and putting part of it in there.
Or not, this policy doesn't define that as a criminal violation.
It does not.
It just says, you're gonna be ejected from office.
But it is a criminal violation. to
Under the
do that.
statute.
Yeah, under the statute.
Correct.
So you're making that as an,
I'm making that as an amendment as well, that we include the language,
To
all of the
include-
language to include
all the language.
of statute 14, the North Carolina General Statute 14-229.
So Bob, if I'm listening to you correctly, your motion is to approve the policy as it is presented with the corrections to it,
Correct.
to replace the oath that is listed here with the oath that we actually took,
That's correct.
and to include the complete language of 14-229.
That is correct as well, Madam Judge.
Any other questions about that?
So these two amendments are all part of the entire motion.
Yes.
We're gonna vote on the second.
Well, do you want to vote on them separately?
I'm fine with the oath of office. I'm satisfied with the current statement, because as you pointed out, this is why we have legal references. And if you start trying to include everything within the general statute, this policy will be about 15 pages long. So that's why, to me, I would certainly support whatever the board goes with.
Well, I disagree with that. The statement itself is basically, it would be another sentence or two that would be inside there is all it's going to include. The 14229 is not much larger than what is currently there. It's just been excerpted almost word for word out of the statute. They've just left out some of the important parts of it.
Let's do them together.
I would prefer that.
Okay, the motion is to accept the presented policy with the, replacing the oath that we have listed with the oath that we take, and also to make further clarify the 14-229 to include all of the language. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Evan, you're doing a good job. We may just have to tell Alec to give
Stay
you
in
more
the
money.
Caribbean.
2 for 2, right?
Okay, and the next one is our K-3 class size resolution and letter, and thank you to all of you who got back with me with any suggestions early so we could get this done. You know, you just can't sit down. Now, y'all may think you can. I can't. You just can't sit down and write a resolution from scratch. You've got to kind of have some different input. Barry, do you want to go over this, or?
I can, if you want me
Would
to
you?
read it, sure would.
And there's a letter in there as well that will go.
Okay, this is the resolution before you. The resolution to encourage legislation to permit classroom size flexibility in military impacted counties. Whereas it is agreed that working towards General Assembly's goal of reducing class size in kindergarten through third grade is beneficial for student success, and whereas reaching this goal is hampered by a lack of adequate classroom facilities, and whereas North Carolina General Statute 115C 301 as amended by Section 833 of the 2016 budget bill, along with changes made pursuant to the House Bill 13, codified funding ratios by statute required mandated decreases in classroom size of the North Carolina Public Schools for kindergarten through third grade beginning in August of 2018. And whereas Onslow County has experienced significant population growth of more than 9% since 2010, it is expected to experience an additional population growth of at least 14.5% by July 2020. And whereas Onslow County's population growth is skewed towards younger families and children, with Onslow County having the highest birth rate in the state at 22% and the lowest median age in the state of 26.6 years, and the seventh highest current pre-kindergarten enrollment. And whereas Onslow County Schools is experiencing rapid growth of student enrollment and the classroom size mandated greatly increases this demand for classroom space. And whereas Onslow County is home to Marine Corps Air Station New River, to Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune, the largest military corps base on the East Coast, which contributes significantly to the influx of student-aged children. And whereas the classroom size mandate, when combined with the sustained growth and potential military growth, will have a particularly significant impact on Onslow County schools, resulting in the immediate need for the equivalent of 3 new elementary schools, which would cost $70 million to $90 million to construct, and the hiring of at least 51 new elementary teachers to achieve compliance by August 2018. And whereas Onslow County is committed to supporting both excellence in education and protecting Onslow County's strong position as a top supporter of military operations and potential mission expansion of our bases. And whereas despite Onslow County continuing its commitment to provide significant capital funding in support of Onslow County schools, compliance with the restrictive classroom size mandate by August 2018 is beyond reach in Onslow County schools without measures such as significantly increasing classroom size 4th through 12th grade and transforming gymnasiums, cafeterias, and auditoriums into classrooms. Now, therefore be it resolved, excuse me, that the Onslow County Board of Education hereby respectively urges the General Assembly to pass legislation in the 2018 legislative session that either adjust, excuse me, adjust the mandate to maintain the 2017-18 class size limits of kindergarten through 3rd grade for the 2018-19 and beyond, or provide public school systems which lack adequate classroom space, especially in military impacted counties, including Onslow County schools, and extended compliance period of 3 to 5 years to raise sufficient public funds to meet the current mandate. And this would be adopted this day, January 2018.
We have a motion to accept the resolution as is presented.
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, motion and second. Any comments or discussion?
Are we also approving the letter that's going along
Yeah,
with this?
yeah, I thought maybe we might want to do them separate, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
No other questions or comments? All in favor of the resolution as is presented, say aye. Aye. All opposed? And next is the letter, and this has gone through a lot of wordsmith, and Earl and I had worked on a letter previously and sent out personally, not from the board, but as personal letters to our legislature, and had a bunch of other documents. So Earl's done a lot of work with our staff on this, and I appreciate that, Earl.
January 19, members of North Carolina General Assembly, and you have the address there. Dear members of the North Carolina General Assembly, since 1985, the Basic Education Program, known as BEP, has provided school districts with flexibility to utilize K-3 teacher funding according to legislative requirements. Over the years, the General Assembly has allowed and required class size to shift beyond what is outlined in the BEP, allowing districts to hire music, art, and PE teachers to meet the instructional requirements in the Basic Education Program. This has been accomplished without receiving any specific state funding to hire these specialty teachers. However, cuts to the K-12 teacher funding since 2011-12 have far exceeded fundings for K-3, leaving school districts with less funding to hire more teachers for students in North Carolina. Student-teacher ratios, as outlined in General Statute 115C 301, will eliminate all flexibility to provide programs vital to the education of young children. Although HB 13 restored some flexibility with class size reductions for the 2017-18 school year only, full implementation of North Carolina General Statute 115C 301 beginning in 2018-19 will have devastating consequences in the Onslow County schools, which includes the following. Hiring of at least 51 new K-3 elementary teacher positions requiring an estimated $2.8 million in funding, compounded by the current critical teacher shortage in North Carolina. The need to secure additional classroom space and funding within a limited time frame, requiring schools to convert auditoriums, multipurpose rooms, and cafeterias into classrooms and purchase and equip mobile units. Displacement of elementary music, art, and PE teachers resulting in program delivery via a la carte. All 21 elementary schools, including the 11 new elementary schools constructed since 1990, have classrooms designed and designated for these specialty areas, and reducing and or eliminating the pre-K programs which are housed at our elementary schools. Our elementary music, art, PE programs, all core subjects in the BEP, has served as the foundation for our strong programs at the middle and high school levels. In the design and construction of our schools, Onslow citizens has placed equal importance in the teaching of these curriculums in appropriate classroom settings. The cost for additional mobile classrooms and the displacement of professional educators and their programs will have an immediate impact on the overall goal of our providing a quality education for all students. With an average enrollment increase of 300+ students each year, projected enrollment in Onslow County Schools will increase from 26,500 to approximately 30,000 students by 2028. The North Carolina General Statute 115C301 would require Onslow County Schools to lose valuable programs and build larger elementary schools, plus placing a greater burden on the taxpayer. We respectfully encourage the General Assembly to pass legislation that either adjusts the mandate to maintain the 2017-18 class size limits of K-3 for the 2018-19 and beyond, or provide public school systems which lack adequate classroom space in an extended period of 3 to 5 years to raise sufficient funds to meet the current mandate. Respectfully, Onslow County Board of Education.
Motion to accept the letter.
Motion to accept it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, comments?
Yes, ma'am. Where are we drawing our numbers from? We're saying that teacher cuts funding since fiscal year 2011, 2012. It seems to me that the allocated budget we've gotten from the state every year that I'm aware of has always gone up, so I'm not sure. Where's that coming
We have
from?
the numbers on that. Jeff can speak to that.
It's under the table numbers.
Yeah, that's fun.
You didn't know it was coming, did you?
No, it isn't, but,
I'm glad you had it.
this thing is. Pass these around.
Jeff, if you had been in Las Vegas and done that, you'd probably got shot.
I'm glad I wasn't in Vegas.
He's reaching in his boot for that other card. but-
Yeah.
I was actually ducking our table trying to hide from y'all, but y'all found me.
You know, you can tell that these were not made on an old mimeograph machine because nobody's doing like this.
This is a different year.
There are two that look very similar, but you'll notice at
Different
the
year.
top, one ends with 2013, the other one ends with 2011.
Still going?
So you should have 3 sheets now. One that says teacher allotment ratios, and then you have 2 sheets that look very similar. They say comparison effects and changes to teacher allotment ratios. One says 2018 to 2013, and the other one says 2018 to 2011. So let me start off first with the red that says teacher allotment ratios. And if you look at this sheet going across the page, of course you have the fiscal year, and then you have grades K through 12 moving left to right. And then they have the fiscal years in that first column, starting with this fiscal year, 2018, and moving down back to fiscal year 2005. So these are the ratios at which the state allotted teachers through the teacher allotment. And keep in mind, the way they do that allotment is not by, well, they use these formulas to come up with the number of teachers that are allotted to the district. However, the district utilizes those as, best needed, including enhancement teachers. Art, music, PE have to come from this. There's not a separate allotment.
Which
for
there
those.
used to be, right?
Yeah,
Used to be.
long ago,
Right.
I guess mid-90s or whatever.
Right.
But the time frame that you see here is all the new structure where they've rolled it all together. They said, okay, these are the formulas that we're gonna give the allotment out on, but then you have the flexibility to use it for regular classroom, enhancement, whatever. And also, through most of that time, we've had a lot of flexibility on the class sizes. It's only more recently that they've restricted that. So that gives you a little background on these allotments. Now, it's very lightly shaded, so you have to kind of look for it on there. But if you'll notice on fiscal year 2012, when you move across to grades 1, 2, and 3, it's lightly shaded green, and you see those say 17, which is one less than the year before in 2011, meaning they allotted a teacher per less number of students, which increases the number of teachers that you receive. So it's green, good thing, we're getting a little bit more for that. The years prior to that are all listed, 2011 through 2005, they're all the same during that time period. So we've gone back to a year that is pre-recession time, the 2008, 2009, when recession stuff hit. So prior to that, 2005 through 2011, all these were the same. 2012, they actually improved the allotment by one, the one student change in grades 1, 2, and 3. 2013, everything remained the same as 2012. But if you notice the line for 2014, what happens there? Across the board, kindergarten through 12, every one of those numbers goes up higher than it was in 2013. So that means more students per teacher. That means less teacher allotment. So that's when the state basically, to balance the budget, had some major budget cuts. And a major way of doing that, because to balance the state budget, education is the main part of the budget. They have to impact education. And within education, the main part of the state budget is teacher allotments. So the only way for them to get any significant numbers there was to cut the teacher allotments. So 2014, there were major cuts there that were put in place. All right, we move up to 2015. Well, you see those numbers for kindergarten, first, second, and third are one less than 2014, which is a good thing. They've started restoring where they were previously. It was a little bit more of a lot for grades K-3, and I think this is where a lot of the emphasis that you're hearing from the legislative level is we've added more teachers. Well, yes, in 2015, you added more teachers in K-3. But if you look at grades 4 through 12, nothing changed. In fact, if you follow 4 through 12 all the way up to today, those were never added back. So the cut that occurred, grades K through 12 in 2014, has only been partially restored in grades K-3. Grades 4 through 12 are still at that 2014 cut level. There was one other enhancement that was done. If you notice, fiscal year 2017, grade 1, that was reduced by one more student there, so there was an additional increase in teachers for that. So that gives you a little history of where all this came about. Now, with that background, if you will pull out the one that does the comparison, up top says 2018 to 2013. And on this sheet, what we're doing is we're taking student number. It doesn't matter which year you pick, it just is to give a comparison. But we use the planning ADM numbers that they had for this fiscal year that we're in now by grade level, because that's how they do those allotments, by grade level. So those student numbers are across the top. Now we're going to use those student numbers with those allotment ratios that we just looked at on the other sheet. So this second kind of set of numbers that you see going down, 2018 allotment ratios, they come straight from that other sheet you just saw. But if you take that student number above it, divided by that ratio, it shows you how many teachers are generated there. And they do a thing where they round to the nearest half position by grade level. So you see, for instance, under kindergarten, the allotment ratio is 18, and the teachers generated on the 2018 allotment ratio basis, 132.5. Okay, everybody find that one? Now, if you follow that all the way to the right, the last column where it says total, there's 1,226 teaching positions. Okay, that's on the 2018 basis. Now go to that next couple rows down there where it's got the fiscal year 2013 allotment ratios. Those are the numbers that we got from the previous page. And underneath that, the number of teachers that we generated at that ratio. And if you follow that all the way to the right-hand column, the total you see there is 1,278.
52.
Okay? So the last row down there, the difference between those shows you by grade level. Well, in first grade, no change in kindergarten. First grade, we've increased 8.5 teachers in 18 versus 13. No change in second or third. But look what happens 4 through 12 where they didn't reinstate the numbers. All those numbers in red bracketed numbers, those are less teachers than what we would have gotten under that 2013 ratio. So the total over there is a negative 52. That means based on this same number of students, if we used what we would have gotten on the 2013 ratio, we would have gotten 52 more teachers this year than we actually got on this allotment. So again, going back to that first sheet, you know, when there's all this talk about how there have been additional teachers given and all that, that is true. We talked about 2015, grades K through 3, increase those ratios. But in grades 4 through 12, there has been no change there. There was an increase in 2017 for first grade. But other than that, the 4 through 12 has not been restored. And I told you, we get our allotment as one big basket of all these teaching positions. It's not like, here's how many kindergarten teachers you get, and you have to go buy kindergarten positions for that. And here's how many first grade, and that's not the way it's sent out as one allotment. HR has to go through, look at the needs of every school. You're looking at kind of schools that for this grade level, they're on the bubble with this many students and that. Where do you add one in here or there to balance loads? And also having to deal with larger class sizes, you know, in the upper grades because we've been cut back. So it's a real balancing act that they have to go through to utilize this allotment. But this points out we have 52 less teaching positions allotted this year than if we were using the 2013 ratios. The other sheet is very similar. I won't go through it all again. It's just comparing it back to 2011 because, you know, someone may say, well, you know, that's not a, you know, I don't want to look at 2013, which was the year before all the cuts. I want to go back to before there were increases in 2012 to the teacher allotment. So let's go back before that, back to the pre-recession levels that had been in place 6, 7 years. So if you go back to 2011 through 2005 were all the same. So on this sheet that says through 2011, do that same comparison. Instead of being 52 teachers short this year, if you based it on 2011 report, we're 29 teachers short. Either way, 29 or 52, that's a far cry from where we used to be if you use previous ratios. So when it's discussed about, well, what are you doing with all these extra positions that you have because we've made increases? Well, we're trying to continue to
educate the upper kids too.
Yeah, educate kids in 4 through 12. Yeah. And we're still trying to offer art, music, and PE, and those sorts of things. We use all of our teacher allotment on teachers. Where they're saying perhaps there are places where people are turning in something else I'm not aware of, we pretty much don't get enough money in any of our funding categories. So there's really no flexibility. Although you might have flexibility to do something, if you don't have enough of anything in any category, you're just rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. You're not really doing anything. So we use all of our teacher positions for teachers. The question I guess, that's coming lately was with the class size restrictions, where now they're saying of this total number of teacher allotment that you get, you got to have at least this many in K-3. And then that's where it's made it more complicated for human resources to try to do that and continue to balance things out for 12, enhancement, and all that. So hopefully that gives you a little background on discussion of cuts. It was kind of like, you know, we gave you increases, but we gave you increases after we gave you decreases. That last part kind of gets left
So the
out.
simple fact that, I think you understand where he's headed with that. And also, one of the things you'll hear from all of our legislators is they're right. They have given us more money in the state of North Carolina each and every year. What they don't tell you on the back end is the population of growth
Right.
for student population, that when you do the average per dollar per student, you're making less than you did even after the increase that the state gives you.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because along those same lines, another answer to your point about the increases in the money each year, if you just look at the dollars, let's say the allotment ratios had not changed. If you go back even those years 2005 through 2011, where there's no changes in allotment ratios, well, each year, they gave us more money. We didn't get any more teaching positions because we just get the position. But like you said, salary increases went up, the benefits such as the retirement rate goes up, the hospitalization costs go up. And so while, yes, we are spending more money for that same number of teachers, we didn't get any additional teachers to do it.
Thank you, that helps explain quite a bit. Now, the only other question I have then would be, this is the money amount. Do we have something similar to this chart that shows how we actually, the average class sizes for those that we can go back and look at to compare? So that, did we bring the class sizes down to what's in the chart here that they're allocating? Because that's one of the problems that they've had a hard time getting information from is, if we're giving you the money, where are you spending it? If we have a chart that correlates with this and says, well, our average class size for 9th grade in 2007 is such and such, and this is what you've given us, but this is what we've had to do in order to
Now,
accommodate.
they have
the
those
needs.
figures.
We have,
Okay.
They have those figures, but I know that, you remember the old PPR report we used to do years ago? Y'all still fill out a report like that goes to the superintendent's
Every month
office?
it's
So why
transmitted
aren't they
out.
asking him for those reports?
Well, and I think now they're starting to look at that, but, you know, it should be very simple, right? How many students do you have in class, you know, at this grade level?
Well-
Until you stop to think about, well, what does that mean, how many students in the class at grade
We-
level? If you, in the elementary grades, you know, they tend to say, well, which class? Well, they might base it on the English language thing. But how many students do you have per class at a high school in a CTE course, in an art course, in
Right.
this or that? So how does that come to be the ratio that they are
Right.
going to look at? So while they may think that they're asking a simple question that can be answered easily, when you get into it, and that's just part of it. There are a ton of things that make it very complicated. And so districts have reported. Initially, when the request came out from the legislature, it came as a survey type request. And the survey was so difficult to understand. For instance, they did some things, okay, how many of these teachers do you have in elementary school versus middle school versus high school? Okay, well, you know, our elementary school is pretty much, you know, K-5, but, okay, K-5, but what about this year when you've got a 5th grade at Dixon
Right.
Middle School? Is that elementary, is that middle? Then you start splitting it up between
K-8.
enhancement teachers. Well, they didn't define what an enhancement teacher is. what is their definition of institute? So that's why there were 115 different ways of reporting across the state, because it was not clear as to what
they're asking.
they're asking.
Paul,
But
you
it,
had
but
a
it,
question.
but it's simple. We can reach their class sizes. We can put 40 in the high school classes and quit hiring high school teachers, A. B, we can quit hiring enhancement teachers, the art, and hire those teachers. Yeah, we'll have plenty of teachers to take care of it then. But that's ridiculous. They're not looking at the truth.
Any other comments?
Well, if you cut some of those things, you're not here for children.
No, you're not.
Mr. Wayne, back to your question, just to reiterate, when Barry was gonna tell you, I have to sign an affidavit that those class sizes in K-3 meet those needs. And he has to provide that to me, that is classroom to.
So this year we,
That's for this year you're talking about.
Right.
yeah,
Well, I'm referring to historical, one of
no.
our class sizes looked at. What do they look like? You know, because to counter, yes, I can look at that, and I know we get more money every year. Okay, there's a lot of variety of factors, but if you look at the allocations you get, and they're less than what you got, I understand that. What I think the disconnect is between school districts and the legislature is they're not sitting down and trying to understand the minutia that you just explained, as opposed to what we
okay, so,
got with actual numbers.
so
and
right
percentages.
now today, K through 3, the LEA average is not above, now we're talking about, it could be 19.96, but it can't go above 20.
Right.
So the LEA average for kindergarten, first, second, third grade, not above 20. That's the average. The class max cannot be above 23, okay? Now, that's where that difficult, that's where we're talking about. The difficulty of that is what happens when that 24th student walks in the door?
Right.
What do you do then? You know, so, but as of the day that we had to report, we didn't have
We
any,
sent him over to Paul's house.
nobody, no classroom was above 23, K3,
Homeschool.
except for, and this is the part that everybody forgets, except for art, PE, and
Right.
music. See, those kids have to go to art, PE, and music as well. So, what happens is, my kindergarten class of 23, because I'm right at the limit, we're still 20 average, but I'm at 23, I send my kids to the PE teacher. Well, there's an EC teacher down the hall that has to send her 3 kids to PE. Now you're at 26. That's
why
why
we
you
got the
did the
waiver.
waiver. So the waiver was for art, PE, and music.
Right.
Everything else, and I would estimate that everybody in the state had to do that, because there's just no way, you know, to do it any other way other than have a waiver for it. But the waiver was for this year only. So that's gonna be another problem next year.
Yeah.
If we don't have the waiver, you know, I don't know how you're gonna do it. I really don't.
We did that 2 months ago, and I got the waiver back approved
Yesterday.
If there are no other questions or comments, and we do have a motion to approve it as written, well, do we have a motion?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, fine. I know, we did those separately. I'm writing myself a note. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Y'all, we have lunches prepared, and I think they would appreciate us going ahead and eating and coming back and doing the redistricting part. Do y'all mind? I don't know why I'm asking the men mind eating. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the Richlands area redistricting, and this is not an action item, but it will be coming before us in February. So ask a bunch of questions and put Steve on the hot spot. I know that he's done a lot of work on this, and redistricting is not enjoyable. Steve?
All right, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. In Mexico, there's a saying called, Cancelleno, corazón contento. Full stomach, you got a happy heart. So in this process, I think it's a great way to start the redistricting conversation. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to keep it as short as possible. And I'd like to let, a couple of the first slides are just stuff that we've talked about before in the past couple of years with redistricting in the past. Basically, it's, the decision rests with the Board of Education. And when we do our redistricting, we always try to use the most accurate data possible. We go with ORED, we look at a staff, transportation department, they know exactly where all the students are located. And we also look at facility specialists to see how many students can fit in each school. When we do this, like I said, we look at student population trends, growth data, transportation facilities, capacities. Then we create maps, and we look at these maps. In this situation here, because in November 2017, just a couple months ago, the board unanimously approved that both Richlands Primary and Richlands Elementary will go into a K-5 environment with the new Richlands Elementary School coming on board in August of 2018. What that means is we have to redistrict to support the K-5 environment for the Richlands Primary School and for the Richlands Elementary School, the new one coming up in 2018. Once we present, create the maps, what we do then is we get community input, and then after that, we provide that information to the board, and the board can, at their discretion, they can make a decision on how they want to proceed as far as redistricting is concerned. As mentioned, in November, the board did unanimously vote for the transition to the new to K-5 for both schools in the Richlands area. And then we began our study. Okay. We've already looked at the maps and different options, and after we started looking at it, we realized that there's basically one primary option that would best serve the needs of the community. So when you look at the maps, the first map you see, and in your packet, also, I've created some 11 by 17 photos of the map as well, so you can see it. And also, if you want to later on, you can look at the boards that we'll be providing for our community meetings as well. Community meetings. When you first look at this first map, if you don't mind, I'm going to stand up for a second. What you see, all this colored area is the existing Richlands K-5 district. Okay, right now. So they both, this serves both Richlands Elementary and Richlands Primary. And if you look at it, current enrollment, basically we're looking at approximately 1,683 students for both K-5 and both Richlands Primary and Elementary. Next year, looking at a projected enrollment based on a 1.3% growth factor that we used in our, when we started looking at our K-3 class sizes and looking how we're going to calculate student growth in the future, we came up to 1,717 students. Now, I'll explain how we did this in a second. What you're seeing is all the students that are involved in the Richlands area that are K-5. The proposed district map for Richlands Primary, okay, and please know that Richlands Primary means that the Richlands Primary School is up here in this corner right here. The reason why it's up there is because over here is Richlands, the new Richlands Elementary School. So, because the distance is, we had to look at how we're going to redistrict while maintaining those schools within their district without having buses go across to another district to get into it. So, this first one we're looking at, if you're looking at the map, what you'll see is basically coming through here is 24,258. Going all the way up to Beaverville. And this basically contains Catherine Lake, you got your 5 Mile, Ashbury Park, and basically everything south of 24,258 until you go to my Gregory Fork and Rob Branch. When you look at that, when we look at the breakdown at the current student year, they're saying we have 853 students in this facility as is what it would look like this year. Okay, next year would be increased, that population would increase back to that, would be 871. The Richlands Elementary School, the new Richlands Elementary School, okay, which would be located up in this area right here is the Richlands Primary School. Richlands Elementary School would basically cover north of 24,258, plus some of the section over here on the south side of 258 by Beaverville. Okay, that includes Richlands proper, Frank County Road, and north of 24,258. Currently, we have 830 students if we were looking at K-5 enrollment right now for the new Richlands Elementary, next year, it was gonna bump up to 846 students. Got any questions so far as far as these maps are concerned? Before I go on, the other thing we looked at when we started doing this is load balancing. We didn't want to put a stress on any one school over another school. We wanted to balance it out as equally as possible, but still maintain community cohesion, right? And also look at logistics and transportation. We wanted to make sure that the routes were as short as possible for the students going to their newly proposed schools. So that's why we put the maps as we did. When we look at the load balance though, what you'll see for Richlands Primary, we think we're going to have, we're projecting 871 students. And I think I showed you guys similar maps when we started looking at K-3 class sizes. So with 871 students, I needed 47 classrooms. By the time I put in all the classrooms available, I'll have one remaining classroom left in Richlands Primary. Okay, now that's based on projections. If the projections change, if it's less, then we may have maybe an additional classroom. If it's more, then we would be consuming that extra classroom space right there. The new Richlands Elementary School, very similar scenario. You got, you'll have 48 classrooms available. We'll have 47 used. And we'll have one classroom available. And that allows us not to put any mobiles at the new school the first year. So I thought it was kind of important. Anyway, I just want to let you know that. Basically, that was the redistricting maps and how we did the load balancing. A couple things that we wanted to do is, the next thing we have to do, or we would like to do, is go ahead and present to the community. And we're planning on January 30th to be at Richlands Primary School at 6 o'clock p.m. to present the proposed maps to them. Once we do that, then we'll receive comments and inputs from the community and any additional comments from the board or other staff. And at that time, once we do that, then we'll present to the board in February the recommendations based off the information we received.
Steve, on these maps, maybe I'm misreading this, I see where Ben Williams Road is down here in the white on both of these. Do they go to Meadowview?
They go to Meadowview. Any other questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Taylor.
The large map on the left, those are the current boundaries for Richlands Primary at the bottom and Richlands Elementary at the top, 3 through 5.
Yeah, well, what happens on this large map right here on the left?
Everything's in the primary.
Okay, there's the whole Richlands district.
Okay.
K-5, which means that I've got some students that are in grades K2 up here, some students in grade 2 up here.
I got you.
And they're going to
Okay.
Richlands Primary. I got some students with grades 3-5 here, some students 3-5 here, and they're going over to the old Richlands Elementary. Now, in the future, what we'll do is K through 5, in the green area, we just go to Richlands Primary. And I realize there's going to be a new name for Richlands Primary, but that's what it's called now, so it's the easiest way to identify it. And then in the blue area, the K-5 students will be going to the new Richlands Elementary.
And the map in the middle is proposed for the,
Richlands Primary District.
and you name it, okay.
And the map over here is the proposed Richlands Elementary District. That's the new.
Okay. In regards to you, the next step, receiving public comments, you talking about going to, did I hear you say Richlands Primary?
Yeah, we've already.
Is that for the entire Richlands district, one meeting?
One meeting for the entire Richlands District.
And that's at Richlands Primary?
Richlands Primary, and we've got it scheduled right now for 6 o'clock p.m. at Richlands Primary School.
On 30th.
We're pushing a message out to them, some point after we do this.
Yeah, once we go through this meeting, we wanted to wait till we had input from the board before we continue to make any kind of announcements about it.
And we'll have messenger that will go out to every household for every, and we'll do the press and everything else we need to for future, them upcoming kindergarten students that might be attending the schools as well, for its parents.
The maps look too logical. I think we're gonna have to hire a special master.
I will say that, and our transportation department did a great job. We looked at several different scenarios, and what happened is, one scenario was cutting into Catherine Lake, so we were breaking up the community. We didn't want to do that. Another scenario was kind of putting Richlands Elementary over in, so people had to drive past Richlands Primary to get to it. We didn't want to do that. And so when we started looking at everything, this was the ideal one, especially with the load balance. We want to make sure that we balanced out the schools.
Will this allow us, as well as compactness, will it allow us also to cut some of the bus rides?
Yes, because if you think about it, right now, I've got, let's say I'm all the way up by the county line, okay, by Taylor Road. And I'm taking my K2 students all the way from up there, all the way down over here, okay? Now I'm doing, and vice versa, I made it down in 5 Mile, and I've got grades 3 through 5 going all the way up to Richlands Elementary. What I'm doing is I'm actually cutting it in half. I'm saying, okay, 5, and he's doing half the route. So we actually are going to be shortening up the drive times, and logistically, I mean, it's a better ride for the students. Now, we will have to go ahead and look at bell times going forward once we lay out once the district plans are finalized.
One of the things when we have our town hall meeting is, the positive side of it is, we've got 2 great schools within a community that no matter which one you go to, I don't know, there may be an argument on going from one to the other, but I think it'll be a positive for us, which isn't always the case when you redistrict, but obviously, this is a, area that's pretty, united, you know, as a Richlands group, that will have 2 good schools that hopefully they'll be happy to go to either one.
Well, I know I'm gonna get asked, so I'm gonna ask you, are you putting in any kind of, grandfather or something to the second grader currently at, Richlands Primary that would be moving?
We haven't factored that into the calculation yet, but I mean, if that's something that comes back from them, we'll take a look at it.
And if you remember when we last did that, it was 1 grade level, as a consideration.
The other thing that you may hear is, remember, we load balance in schools. So when we factor the load balancing in the schools, we had to include the mobile classrooms that are already at Richlands Primary. Okay. If we didn't do that, then we'd actually be moving mobile classrooms over to the new elementary school. Then the question is, why did we do that? It gets a little bit trickier in that process.
I think that if we get pushback, that's going to be part of it. We're going to have some kids that thought they were going to a brand-new elementary school, and they're going to end up in a mobile classroom.
And that's why we get paid the big bucks.
I guess.
With the student population in the Richlands area as it is, I mean, there's going to be mobile classrooms somewhere.
My children, when they opened Jackson Commons Elementary in the mid-90s, both my children transferred from Morton to Jackson Commons. We walked to the back of the school, into a mobile classroom we went. I said, wait a minute. But anyway, things worked out.
Any other questions for Stevie? Y'all, you know, this is always tough, and as we go out and talk with people, we haven't as a board made a decision yet of what we're, you know, how we're gonna do this. But we really, I think the Board of Education has been extremely blessed to work together, and I don't believe we've ever not had a unanimous vote on redistricting that I can remember. Do any of you? Because it's a tough call. Thank you to staff for all that you've done today, and for Evan, appreciate him being here. And
Is it an action item now?
it's not. I said that up front.
Okay.
They will bring this all back after they collect
It
the
may be
data.
something that comes out of the meeting that makes sense, or we might want to change, but we'll bring it to you in February, and we'll talk about it in our pre-boards.
But if you have questions as they come up, call Rick or send an email out so that all of us see the questions, and we don't want to supply any big answers until we kind of make what what we know that we're gonna do. I've had a great day. I think we've had 2 great meetings, good conversation, good food, and I know everybody wants to go take a siesta now. We have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? You want to stay?